Go ahead, Sally. We'll get
Okay.
this thing started. All right.
All right.
Thank you for this program, by the way.
Oh,
Yes.
absolutely. Absolutely. I'll give myself a brief introduction. I've been working at GIA for about 15 years. For about 12 years, I've been in the diamond research and diamond identification area. Before that, I was one of the editors for Gems and Gemology Journal. And prior to that, I did my PhD in chemical engineering, where I was studying how to grow CVD lab-grown diamonds. So that's my background, and I love talking about diamonds. I've lived in San Clemente and Laguna Hills for about the last 15 years, so I am very happy to be part of the South Orange County family, and so I'm really glad to be talking here tonight. And so yes, so today, or this evening, I'll be talking about the science behind fancy color diamonds, and I will be going through the rainbow, and I hope you're able to learn something or helpful about coloring diamonds and how defects play a role in creating these beautiful diamonds. Okay. So, sorry, it's okay. Sorry, I thought I had an extra slide there. I'm sorry. But today I will. Sorry about that. Today I will be providing an overview of all of the color-causing defects and discussing the diamonds and the absorption spectra and how to read them. And I'll be going through each of the major color groups and the causes of color. So diamond is a simple material, just carbon. It's perfectly pure, perfectly diamond, and it's colorless. But some fun things happen when we start adding defects. In this example, we're changing one of those carbon atoms into nitrogen. And we've found that depending on the defect, depending on the concentration, the results in these diamonds can be quite beautiful. So I'm going to segue for a little bit with a metaphor, and then I'm going to circle back around to diamond. At the top, we have some ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, and these went unknown and untranslatable for centuries. People could see the glyphs, but could not understand the stories. And then in the 1800s, French soldiers found the Rosetta Stone, which acted as a translator, and we in the modern age were finally able to understand the stories of the ancient Egyptians and understand the hieroglyphics. Similarly for diamond, we have a diamond that was trying to tell its story through its defects, but it was in a language we could not understand. So we need a translator, just like the Rosetta Stone, and that is, in this case, we're using an IR spectrometer. With spectroscopy, the diamonds are able to reveal their secrets. They're able to tell their stories, and we can know their history. So for this diamond, we can see that it's a type 1B colored by isolated nitrogen, and we know based on that a lot more about its cause of color and a lot more about its history. So all the things that we're doing with spectroscopy is just to try and translate the diamonds into a language we can understand and to understand what their story is. So this is an overview of what we'll be going through today. We'll be talking about some yellow-orange diamonds, pink, purple, and red diamonds, green, blue, gray, violet, and then we'll finish it off with some fancy white, fancy black stones. I'm going to start talking first about all of the different defects that can be possible in diamonds. I'm going to start first by talking about intrinsic defects, the ones that just involve carbon and the diamond lattice structure. So I'm going to start off with this pure diamond lattice, pure carbon, and no errors in the diamond lattice. And I'm going to start changing things. I'm going to irradiate it, and I'm going to add in some vacancies. And just with that simple substitution, we can start to create some vibrant green stones. Let's go back to that pure carbon, and instead of creating vacancies, I'm going to give it a little kink, or actually that's what the Earth does when it subjects it to geologic forces deep in the Earth. It gives it that little kink, and then with the right ingredients, it can create brown or pink to red stones. Now we're going to start adding in other impurities, other elements into the diamond lattice. So if we instead replace some of those carbon atoms with nitrogen, then we can get a vibrant canary yellow stone. If we substitute instead, if we put some boron atoms in, then we can get a vibrant blue. If we start mixing up and combining these different defects together, we talked earlier about vacancies, we can combine that with nitrogen. And instead of getting a green color from the vacancy and a yellow color from the nitrogen, when we put them together, we can get a pink color. This is a rather rare way to get pink color in natural diamonds, but it's the most common way we get pink color in treated and in lab-grown diamonds. So while it's very rare in nature, it's the most common way that we see it for diamond treatments. And we can start making some other combinations. I'm sorry, does someone have a question? Okay. We can start mixing them up some more. Instead of having a single nitrogen, if we have a nitrogen pair, instead of that creating more color in the stone, that can start to decolorize the diamond. So it's not just always a matter of adding in more defects, getting in more color. Sometimes adding in more defects and rearranging them will decolorize them. And so if you have a nitrogen pair, then that will decolorize a stone. Or if you have 4 nitrogens and a vacancy, that can also decolorize a stone. I'm sorry, does someone have a question?
I don't see any.
Okay. I'm sorry. I thought I heard someone asking. Okay. But both of those, the what we call the A center and the B center, those absorb in infrared, and so those don't absorb in the visible, and so that's how they're able to the formation of those are able to decolorize a diamond. But while we're also creating those A centers and B centers, along the way, we can also create some other defects that can impart color. So she has 3 nitrogens and a vacancy, that's called the N3 center, or 2 nitrogens and a vacancy. And those can create yellow color in the stone if they're present in high enough concentrations. So we have a whole cast of characters here, both on this slide and on the previous slide. And we're going to be seeing all of these throughout this talk as we go through the different colors. Since we are talking about color in diamonds, I'm going to talk a little bit about the electromagnetic spectrum. And this narrow band is the visible light. And sometimes it's stunning to think that the whole thing that we see of the world and the way we relate to the world is just as a little band of light. And in gemology, what we principally deal with is a little bit into the ultraviolet, and then through the visible part from 400 nanometers up to 700 nanometers, and then up into the near infrared. And so this is what we're going to be looking at mostly today when we're looking at color in diamond. So here's a picture of a white light going into a stone. And we normally don't think about white light as being composed of all the different colors of the rainbow, but it is. And all of those colors are being absorbed by this, or entering into the stone, and the blue and the purples are being absorbed, and what we see transmitted out of that is predominantly what is yellow. So that is what's happening in the stone and how we are able to see the yellow color. Now, this is not new. Bob Crowninshield has been looking at that decades ago when he was looking at diamonds using his spectroscope, and he saw these series of lines, the tape lines in the diamonds, And as scientists, we like to look at 2D representations, we like numbers, and so we want to be able to see what are the precise peak locations and the wavelength addresses for each of these individual peaks, so that we're able to better understand what is happening inside the stone. So since we're going to be looking at a lot of absorption spectra, I'm just going to briefly talk about this one as an example. So along the x-axis, we see the wavelength of the stone. It's where all the colors of the rainbow are broken out into the different colors. And along the y-axis, if you go up, then we're seeing increased amounts of absorbance. And if we go down on the y-axis, then we see increasing amount of transmission. And so there's a lot of information in these absorption spectra that we're looking at. If you want to know what are the peaks that are causing the absorption, then you look at the peaks. And if you want to know what is the color that comes to your eye, then you look at the valleys. So as we go through these spectra, we're going to be looking at peaks to determine what is the color causing defects. We're going to be looking at the valleys to see what is the color in the stone. So in this example, we're looking at a beautiful pink to red diamond, and it has this very broad band that's centered at 550 nanometers. And that broad band is one of the mysteries that we still have in diamond science, is that we don't really know what it is. There's a lot of other defects that scientists have been able to identify exactly. So the defect that causes blue fluorescence in diamond, we know exactly what that is, 3 nitrogens and a vacancy. But this is one of the mysteries that we still have, is what exactly is causing this broad band here that creates the pink color in diamond. So here's an example of several different absorption spectra, and we can see that they're all different and they're all creating very different colors in the diamond. And so we can also see a combination of broad bands like this one in the pink at 550 nanometers, and then we can also see some sharp peaks like these at in the blue region that are nitrogen related. So let's look at each one individually. So this one at the top, we saw this on a previous slide. We see it has a broad 550 nanometer band, and it has some nitrogen related peaks. And we see that a lot in natural diamond. We see a lot of nitrogen related defects throughout all natural diamonds. Nitrogen is very abundant in the earth, and it's very similar in atomic size as carbon, so it loves going into diamond. And so we see that a lot in natural diamonds, and we see a lot of nitrogen-related defects within the blue absorption. This next stone is a vibrant green, and that is also showing nitrogen-related defects absorbing in the blue. And then over here within the red, we see this vacancy-related defect called the DR1. So this is, so we have absorption in the blue due to nitrogen and absorption in the red due to irradiation, and then that leaves this window in the green. This yellow diamond, this has a lot of nitrogen-related defects that are absorbed in the blue, leaving a window in the yellow. And then this brown diamond, we don't see any sharp peaks or pronounced broad bands. We just see this general rise up the low wavelengths, and that creates a brown color in the stone. And we know that that's associated with vacancy clusters. So we've looked at a number of, we've talked about a number of these and looked at each of these color groups in depth. And if you're interested in reading more about that, I would encourage you to go to one of these articles where we've talked about each of these in great detail. And coming soon is we're having in the summer 2020 issue, we're not quite sure when that'll come out because of COVID, but we're going to discuss yellow orange diamonds in that. And then in the fall 2020 issue, we're going to discuss D to Z diamonds. And that was a really exciting article to research and put together. So I'm excited about that one to come out. So I'm going to talk a little bit about yellow diamonds. first of all, they're not all the same defect. You can look, when you look at a yellow diamond, you may not realize that there's several different potential causes of color, that not all yellows are the same. And the only way we're able to tell the differences between them is through spectroscopy. And you can tell that they all have very similar color appearance, but their spectra are distinctly different. And it's important from looking at the spectra to know, because then that tells us a lot about potential history, whether a diamond could possibly be treated or a lab grown, and or if the color is definitely natural. So up here in the upper left, we have so-called cape peaks. And we see that in about 70% of yellow diamonds, that's the dominant cause of color in about 70% of yellow stones, where we have where we see peaks at about 415 nanometers and 472. And so the vast majority of yellow stones do get their color from these nitrogen-related peaks. Over here on the right, we have a yellow diamond that has its color from the general absorption from isolated nitrogen impurities. And we've talked, and I've shown that several times earlier today. And what that does is it creates this broad general absorption within the visible spectrum and going towards the ultraviolet. And if you, as you get high of nitrogen, that rise will occur early at higher and higher wavelengths, and you can get a shift from yellow color into orange depending on where that rise in that absorption band happens. Down here in the lower left, we have what's called a 480 nanometer band. That's another mystery in diamond science. We call it a 480 nanometer band because we don't know what else to call it. We don't know what the defects are involved with it, and so that's still one of the things that we're trying to figure out. We do know that we see it a lot in diamonds that have high amount of A centers. It has been proposed that it's somehow related to oxygen, but we are still trying to figure out what all is involved with the formation of this defect. And this is another one that's only found in natural stones. And then over here on the lower right, we see a diamond that's colored by a high amount of what we call the H3. And that's related to 2 nitrogens and a vacancy. And if you have high amount of that, then you can also get yellow color as well. So the color range in yellow to orange diamonds depends a lot on what the defect is that's causing the color. Among those diamonds that get their color from the cape defects, the diamonds that have about 70% of yellow diamonds are colored by the capes, by the cape defects. And what we can see there is we can see increasing amount of brown color if it has higher and higher amounts of hydrogen. If the diamond is colored by nitrogen, you can have increasing amounts of orange if it has a higher amount of that single nitrogen present in the stone, or you can have increasing amount of brown color if it is has its color is affected by plastic deformation. With the 480 nanometer band, you can also get increasing amount of orange. In fact, the vast majority of pure orange diamonds get their color from this 480 nanometer band. And pure orange diamonds are one of the rarest colors out there. So that's definitely something very special to be able to see. And then H3 defects. You can have yellow coloration, but it also can do something special, is that not only can you get absorption from the H3 defect, but you can also get fluorescence and impart a green fluorescence to the stone as well. So that's how you get a greenish yellow in these diamonds, is you're getting the H3 to cause absorption, and then you're also getting a greenish fluorescence from the same defect as well. And then if you have the H3 in conjunction with this 550 nanometer band, you can also get a brownish orange to an orangey color in those as well. So with yellow diamonds, most of these are related to nitrogen. And I'm just going to go quickly through talking about the different diamond types. talk about how we get all of those different defects. So just to briefly recap, the type 2A stones are diamonds that have no measurable nitrogen, no measurable boron, and these are very rare. Only about 2% of natural diamonds are type 2A. Whereas among diamonds that have no measurable nitrogen but have boron are called type 2B. And then among the diamonds that do have nitrogen, that's 98% of the natural diamonds. All of them start out life as a type 1B, where when the nitrogen is incorporated in the diamond as it's grown, it grows in as a single isolated nitrogen. And so all very young diamonds are this color when they're first formed. It's only through time and temperature, through the millions and billions of years that the diamond resides in the earth, that those nitrogens find each other, that they pair up, and then that diamond goes colorless. So it's just interesting to think that so many of the diamonds that when they're first formed are this very vibrant canary yellow, and that it's through the time and temperature that all these natural diamonds, most of them do decolorize. And then along the way, as these nitrogen pairings occur, you can also get some of these side reactions that can create yellow or greenish yellow color. And then just an example for, just an example here is the N3 defect that we've talked about quite a bit. And this is just a reminder that not only can it absorb in the blue and create yellow color, it can also have, and the well-known that we see in so many diamonds is due to this defect. I'm going to switch now and talk about pink diamonds. And pink diamonds can vary quite a bit in color saturation, from very light pink all the way up to fancy red. If you have increasing amount of brownish color, then you can have that contribution as well as an increasing amount of orange. And you can also have an increasing amount of purple. And so there's a wide variety of color descriptions that are all under this pink umbrella of pinks and browns and pinkish oranges and purples. All are encompassed under this pink umbrella that I'm talking about now. And why do we put them all under this one category? And it's because there's two major color centers in pink diamonds. One is the nitrogen vacancy center that I mentioned earlier, that's in that is very rare in natural diamonds, but very common in treated and lab-grown diamonds. But the vast majority of pink to red diamonds get their color from this 550 nanometer absorption band. And that is caused by plastic deformation defects, where geologic forces create this kink in the stone. And instead of getting one vacancy, we get a family of vacancies. And that creates this brown to pink to red color. So here we're showing a number of absorption spectra for pink diamonds. And almost all of these have this 550 nanometer band. Some are more pronounced than others, but they're all showing it. We can also have some diamonds that have nitrogen-related features as well, and then that help boost up the overall absorption that we see in those stones. So this is why we see so many, this is a slide that shows why we see so many different colored diamonds under this one, what I call a pink umbrella. These are two stones that look very different. This is a vivid purple on the top, and then on the bottom we have a pinkish orange. But you can see that they're both colored by the 550 nanometer band. But it's other features in the stone, nitrogen-related features such as the H3 and N3 that help shift the color in this pinkish orange. Instead of appearing purple, it starts to appear as pinkish orange. This slide shows that this is a compilation of data here. We're along the x-axis. I'm showing different color saturations from faint up to fancy deep or fancy dark. And then what I'm showing along the y-axis is how many percentage of diamonds within each of those color saturations are colored by specific features. So the ones that have just the pink color are those that are colored only by the 550 nanometer band. And we see that mostly in stones that have faint to fancy saturations. In order to get into the higher saturations, the intense, the vivids, we have to have additional features. We have to have the 550 nanometer band, but we also have to have other nitrogen-related centers, the H3, the N3, or we have to have them both in order to create those very intense and vivid colors. So why are we talking about that? It's because on this next slide, I'm going to talk about some of the other interesting things about pink diamonds. And that's one thing is when we look at pink diamonds in the microscope, we can see several gemological features that are really interesting because they can help correspond to a specific location. For example, on the far left, I see what we are term as graining, and these are wavy lines and outs, and you can see the color is concentrated within those wavy lines, but outside that you can also still see pink color. And so we're just calling that graining, and we see that by and large in stones from the Argyle line. And here in the center, we're seeing diamonds that we'll refer to as glide planes, where you can see that this color is concentrated and it's only within these glide planes, and you can see that they're very straight and they're parallel, but you don't have the waviness that you do for the Argyles. And we see these a lot in stones that are from Siberia. And so we can't say that all stones that have this glide plane is from Russia or is from Siberia, but based on the quantities that come out of the Argyle and the Siberian mines, you can make a pretty good hypothesis that that is the likely source. Another interesting thing is we can determine what the diamond type is by and large from looking at the microscopic and gemological characteristics. So those pink diamonds from the Argyle mine, those are by and large type 1A, where the A centers are less than the B centers. And the Siberian diamonds have quite a bit of nitrogen, whereas the A outnumber the B. And then those type 2A diamonds, those are very even coloration. You don't see the graining and those color concentrations like you do in the Argyle and the Siberian.
Sally, I think there's a question or two.
Sure.
I don't know if you want to look at those on in the chat. Does Argyle still feature the pink tinder? Isn't Argyle mined out, or will it be mined out soon?
From what I've heard is that the Argyle mine is scheduled to close in 2020. I have not heard any updated or more recent things since before COVID started, but the last I heard before COVID started was that it was scheduled to close in 2020. And that's it should be really interesting to see what happens with colored diamonds with the Argyle mine closing. There are several different colored diamonds and classes of colored diamonds that only come from the Argyle mine. And in fact, that's one thing that I'm trying to mention on this slide here, is that the diamonds that have the very intense colorations are principally coming from the Argyle mine, because those have high amounts of those nitrogen-related defects that help create the very vivid colors. And so we see those by and large from the Argyle, and to a much lesser extent from the Siberian. Oops. And so that's one of the things that we will likely lose when the Argyle mine closes, is those very intensely colored pinks. Additionally, violet diamonds by and large come from the Argyle mine as well. And so it looks like, so I'm projecting that we will see a lessening in the number of violet diamonds and gray-blue diamonds that get their color from hydrogen, and then also a lot of these intensely colored pinks and then into the red when the Argyle mine closes. So that's my projection, but I haven't heard any updates about the Argyle mine closing.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to switch now to green diamonds. And when we normally think of green diamonds, we normally think of those diamonds that have been irradiated, and that the green color generally comes from irradiation. And as we go through these, you'll see that those caused by irradiation generally give the most vibrant colors, vibrant greens, and the most what we call pure greens. But there are several other sources of greenish color in diamonds. So we'll go through all of those. But yes, certainly those caused by radiation are definitely give the most vivid and pure colors of greens that we generally see. So the major cause of color that we see for green diamonds is caused by radiation. I mentioned that earlier, where radiation can knock out one of these carbon atoms, leaving a vacancy. And so that creates this absorption in the red. It's flanked by nitrogen-related absorption in the blue, creating a window in the green. And then the H3, we talked about that before in reference to yellow diamonds and how it can give greenish yellow color in diamonds. It can also give yellowish green color, as we can see here, where we can see a combination of both H3 absorption and H3 fluorescence. And so depending on how much fluorescence is present in the stone, we're able to see it is either predominantly yellow or predominantly green. We can also have hydrogen-related defects. And what that does is hydrogen causes absorption in the red to the near infrared. And again, that's flanked by nitrogen-related absorption in the blue, leaving a transmission window in the green. Similarly, nickel, nickel is a huge atom compared to carbon, but it still can't go into the diamond lattice, and it can create absorption also in the red to near infrared. That is also flanked by absorption, nitrogen-related absorption in the blue that gives a transmission window in the green. So there are several different possible ways that we can get green color in natural diamonds. So this slide shows you the color range for what we could see for the GR1, for the radiation-related defects. We can see a very vibrant green here, and then and with decreasing radiation, we can see lower amounts of saturation. If we see lower amounts of nitrogen, then instead of seeing the color as green, the transmission window shifts towards the blue. And so we're able to see some greenish blue colors as well. With the H3, we can see variation from green to yellowish green. And then with hydrogen-related defects, we typically see a color variation around green to gray-green. And then with nickel-related defects, we typically see those as yellow to yellowish green. With radiation exposure, a lot of natural diamonds have a surface coloration due to it coming into close contact with radioactive grains while it's sitting in the crust of the earth. It's not very deeply penetrating. It doesn't leave behind anything that can be considered permanent once that the rough diamond is faceted. In order to get body coloration, you have to have beta or gamma radiation that penetrates deeply into the stone so that it's able to survive that faceting process. The vast majority of stones that have some sort of surface coloration, is only present on the rough surface and cannot be seen after faceting. And that's one thing I'm showing here, is that these are just images that show an example of some green rough, and then and showing some green body color that is able to be preserved within the faceted stone. And then this is an example of a rough that shows surface coloration and which cannot survive the faceting process. So how we get that radiation in the stone is that it comes in contact with the radioactive mineral or radioactive fluid, and then that knocks that carbon out from its lattice position. And then depending on whether you have nitrogen causing absorption, then you can have a green color. If it is not, then you can have a blue color within the stone. And we know that the green color, or that radiation, only happens within shallow depths, typically less than about 30 kilometers, because we have this, because we know that that green color will not survive if the diamond is heated up to greater than 500 or 600 degrees Celsius. We know at higher temperatures that green coloration is lost and changed to yellow brown. And so we know that it has to be within a very narrow and very low temperature window in order to preserve that green color. So that's how we know that this can only happen within the very shallow depths of the earth. Because if we go deeper in the earth, we get a higher temperature, and at higher temperatures, any green color is lost and transformed into yellow-brown. I'm going to segue now into blue diamonds, blue, gray, and violet diamonds. And here we have 4 different causes of color. And generally when we think of blue color in diamond, we are thinking of boron, such as the Hope diamond. That's probably the most famous example of a blue diamond, and that gets its color from boron. But there are several other causes of color. Blue, gray to violet color can occur due to hydrogen, and I mentioned that earlier in reference to the Argyle diamonds, where these principally come from the Argyle mine. And then also with the GR1, if we don't have high amounts of absorption in the blue for these diamonds colored by GR1, then that transmission window is no longer in the green, but instead shifts towards the blue. And then we can also have inclusions. We can have high amounts of clouds, graphitic inclusions within the stones, and so that can give a gray color. And these are sort of a close cousin to the fancy white diamonds that I'll talk about later. But and these we get a grayish coloration due to inclusions. And then over here on the right, I show a cause of this color distribution among the blue, gray to violet stones. And you can see 36% of blue diamonds in this color category do get their color due to boron. So it's not a majority, but we show here on this next slide, we're looking at along the bottom here, we're looking at the hue, what the color of the stone is, whether it's green, blue, or into bluish gray or to gray. And then over here on the right, we're seeing the saturation or the tone of the stone. And we can see that this can vary quite a bit based on the cause of color. I'm sorry, was there a question?
Can you see in the chat field, Sally, there were a couple of, if you answered one of them about Argyle, and then there's a variety of questions there.
Okay,
that
okay.
Sure, see
sure.
where that fits into your program.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'll just
you can wait till the end, or if
okay.
anything is coming up.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, I'm just reading them. Okay. Okay. I don't believe I have ever graded any of the tender, the Argyle tender stones. Those typically go to the New York lab. And then there's a question about elements with different valences. I replaced carbon in the diamond lattice. That happens quite a bit. And let's nitrogen. I'll come back to that question at the end.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Okay.
Don't worry about you. Keep your flow going. You're
Okay.
doing great. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So with blue diamonds, those colored by boron have the dominate among the diamonds that have the fancy to intense to vivid color saturations, and they also are predominant among those with pure blue color. Those with blue to grayish color are more often those that are colored by hydrogen, such as from the Argyle line. And then those with greenish blue color, predominantly colored by GR1. Okay. This slide gives the color range that we see for all of the different causes of color that are with up here at the top we have color due to boron, and we can see increasing depth of color. That's due to increasing amount of boron. We can also have increasing gray color due to increasing amount of plastic deformation. In these cool colored stones, instead of seeing an increasing amount of brown color like you would in a yellow or a pink, due to increasing plastic deformation, in blues we see it as more of a grayish coloration. In color due to hydrogen defects, we can see that more often as gray blue to a violetish color. And then among those colored by GR1, we see it predominantly colored as a greenish blue color, and very different in color appearance than those pure blues that are colored by boron. Looking at just the boron and the effect of boron concentration on color, this is showing that as we increase that amount of boron, so, then we get a dramatic increase generally in the color saturation that we see in the stone. So down here at the bottom, we have it basically a colorless diamond with 30 parts per billion of uncompensated boron in it. And it doesn't require a lot of boron in order to give some rather intense colors. I mean, we're talking about parts per billion here, which is not a lot of boron in the stone, but it's enough to create these very vivid colors, such as this one here at 700 parts per billion. And what that does is creates this pronounced peak at about 2,800 wave numbers, and then that creates an absorption gradient that goes towards the visible range, where you're absorbing in the infrared, and then it's slanted towards the red, leaving the transmission window within the blue. This slide shows that the phosphorescence in type 2B diamonds, the Hope diamond, is one of the most famous characters that shows this red phosphorescence. And one of the things that we've saw with studying the phosphorescence in natural type 2B diamonds is that all natural type 2B diamonds have either a phosphorescence band at 660 nanometers or a phosphorescence band at 500 nanometers. And oftentimes they have both. But all type 2B diamonds that are natural will have either this 500 nanometer band phosphorescence, or this in the blue, or phosphorescence within the red. And sometimes you see this combination, like for this one diamond that I'm showing here. You can see this this phosphorescence progression where it starts out as a blue phosphorescence, and then you can see that as the blue decays away, you get this combination of blue plus red appearing as pink. And then after the blue is decayed away, then you get only the red appearance remaining until that finally decays away. Type 2B diamonds also form very deep within the earth. And one of my colleagues, Evan Smith, he was studying the inclusions in these, and he found that they grow very deep, about 660 kilometers below the Earth's surface. And the boron, the source of the boron, is likely subduction of the oceanic lithosphere into the lower mantle, and that's the likely boron source to create these type 2B diamonds. So this is the hydrogen diamonds that have a gray to blue to violet appearance. These are predominantly from the Argyle mine. And what we see here is very high amounts of nitrogen in their infrared absorption spectra, and also high amounts of hydrogen. So that's where the hydrogen naming comes from, is that we see very high amounts of hydrogen in their infrared absorption spectra. These are also interesting because they show a slight Alexandrite effect, in that they have two transmission windows in their absorption spectra. One is positioned within the blue, and the other transmission window is within the red. And so if we look at the diamond within daylight, then the blue absorption transmission window is dominant. And if you look at the diamond in incandescent light, then the red transmission window is dominant. So that's how we get this Alexandrite effect within these stones. And then I'll just briefly talk about fancy white and fancy black diamonds. These deviate a little bit from the others in that we're not seeing an atomic level defect involved with these. Instead, the color is generally due to nanometer to micrometer sized inclusions for both the fancy whites and the fancy blacks. And so finally, I just want to say that every diamond contains the story of its formation. Within each of these spectra, I can look at it and know precisely that this is a natural diamond with natural color. And then for this diamond at the bottom, I can look at its spectra and know that it's an irradiated CVD synthetic. So the spectroscopy is a great help to us because it reveals these diamond stories, and it translates their history into a language we can then interpret. And for the rarest of diamonds, these stories can sometimes be quite valuable. So thank you very much for your time and attention. I know I went through a lot of the color groups and some rather quickly, but if you're interested, then I would strongly encourage that you look at some of our Gems and Gemology articles where we go in depth into the different color groups.
Sally, we
Yes.
can't thank you enough for doing this presentation. I can open up. I think you can wave or I don't know if anybody can unmute themselves.